Hello my brothers and sisters of the Order, welcome back to the Order. I am Celtic Templar, and yes, this is our first History in Gaming video, and pretty much might be in the third or such, but this is the official title which we are starting on. And yes, we are starting on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Not the best cup of tea, but if I'm gonna get into this shit, I might in the process start getting into a little bit more historical accurate look. Shall we? Alright, now that I'm back, well, as you can see, I'm in my full attire of armor and gear, so why don't we get started? Now, one major thing I have to put out here, y'all, that the storyline in the game is incredibly great. Now, I had to explain to y'all the storyline with Assassin's Creed. They like to move things around and such, which is a big thing, which many of you might wonder, but Templar, what about this and that? Well, in truth, actually, the armor and equipment that of which was used at the point in time was a lot different, but I think I'll get that very soon. But the storyline that they had was incredible, especially for the mythology, which this is Assassin's Creed, y'all, which they like to play around with it, which I don't mind, as long as they keep it historical accurate-wise, and this ain't it, sadly, which is really bad. Yeah, which we'll get to that very soon, and you'll understand why. But yeah, I love the fact that they added even the little frickin' rodent known as Radataskurn, or known as the annoying squirrel of the said Norse mythology. It's actually stated that Radataskurn was the said squirrel that ran up and down the tree, the world tree, to the dragon that actually gnawed at the roots of the tree. Which, I'm glad they actually added that inside the mythology story, which is really cool, because the fact is, you don't hear that in pretty much anywhere, and the fact is, that's actually hilarious. Now, yes, he would actually, he was stated to be a nuisance to both the eagle and the dragon, which I'll leave a link down below for y'all if any of y'all need to know Norse mythology and anything like that, if any of y'all are new to it, or if any of y'all have just played the video game and dislike it. So, yeah, I'm just going to explain this to y'all, because the fact is, they got a lot correct in Norse mythology. Which, this is where I thought, oh my god, they got that right, and as well, most of the storyline right, but the rest they got so wrong. It's not even right. But yeah, they even added Loki's son, Fenrir the Wolf, and it's actually stated, yes, Fenrir does bite off Tyr's arm, the god of justice. However, he's also known as the god of war. Now, there is still a debate between many historians and such of who is the god of war, such as Thor or Tyr, which it goes back and forth every time, so I'd rather not get involved in this little fight, okay? Because I am wearing a Thor's hammer, yes, but however, this has also been known as Tyr's hammer, because it stands for a T-type design shape. Let me see if I can get that in type form, but yeah. As well, I'm wearing also several other Norse-type items, including Norse symbols, such as crosses and all that, but you see my point. Now, what I have to explain to y'all is also what the major fact into this. Norse mythology, they got so grand in this, and also playing in with it a little bit, but you gotta admit, it is really good. Especially with the fact of how Odin had to sacrifice his one eye in order to know knowledge beyond anything. Now, especially technically at the very end of it, we actually see them going to the supposed world tree in the storyline, which is somewhat actually really cool. I don't know why, I kind of like it. But it was just really cool with the storyline, everything about it. And as well, especially the said kings and lords and such at that point in time, which is kind of correct. Now, this is technically supposed to take place during the reign of King Alfred around the years of 871 to 886 AD. Now, this is back when he became the King of Wessex, before he became known as the King of England. So, there's a huge difference in the variation of term. So, yeah, as we can understand, you'll understand what I mean by that. But most of the time in history, we have to understand history has to stay history. And this one they kind of fucked up with some reason, because it's kind of like somebody did. It's like somebody went. It's like halfway they got it fully done, and then halfway they got some idiot from a Dungeons and Dragons freak or a. I want to say. Probably a fan of Game of Thrones and such, and thought, oh, this could grow in here. See my point? That's actually how it feels. So, yeah. Let's just get in the armor outfits and get that shit over with so we can get to the weapons and stuff and can go through that incredibly quickly. Alright, outfits and armor. This is a major thing I have to put out here. Now, one major thing I did like was the fact on how they got the Saxons right. That's right, they got the Saxons correct. I'm kind of surprised they somewhat did. In fact, the Saxons look, well, Saxon. Well, except for their shields, but I'll take that for the next one. So, yeah. Now, one major way I can actually explain to you on how different the variations on arms and armor in this game is different is the fact it's not even historically accurate for your character. Nor is it historically accurate for the Vikings, nor for the Welsh, or the Picti, or in this case the Picts, or Caledonians, or the Kingdom of Alba. Which, yeah, at this point in time, the Picts were pretty much no longer becoming known as the Picts, but now soon to become the Kingdom of Alba. That technically took hold in the 900s, but that's a little bit later, so yeah. Now, this is what I have to understand also, that they're going to have an Irish DLC and a French DLC in there soon, especially with the invasion of Paris and with the Irish people. Oh man, they're probably going to do it just as bad as the Picts, which is no. Just no. Because, just for the sake, I'll also have to explain this part in religion. The religion for the time of the Irish was no longer of that paganism, it was Christianity. And in fact, during this point in time, many Christian works were actually being, well, it's like stated most of the time, Celtic-style artwork was found in Ireland and being put throughout the world, especially on the Holy Bible, which that is probably the most beautiful part out there. But I think I'll have another video for that next year for the month of March for Celtic history. So, yeah. Anyways. One thing I have to put out here, y'all, is the major fact on how we have to understand on the weapons and armor. Well, as I said, we have to first start and take a look at the outfits. So let's take a look at our character. Well, for one, he doesn't get historical style outfits, none whatsoever, except for the very early part of the game. And during that early part of the game, and I mean way, way early, right? Like it's like right when you're technically a prisoner. That's it. And I'm not talking about that Raven crap shit. I'm talking about that earlier version. You get the historical leg wraps, which is historically accurate. But then they just go and fuck it over. In fact, because in fact, I thought the game was going to look historical accurate-wise until and you meet Dag, I think his name was. So, yeah. And as soon as you see Dag, you know this is not going to end well. It will not. This is really hard. Because, one, I have to put this, I'll talk about it very soon, but you gotta understand, he's wearing scale armor. You'll know why of how that's bad very soon. Now, your character, your character entirely, they get, no, you get a chance of female or male. I just went with the male variation. And here's the thing. The armor you get in the game, it's probably best you don't ever upgrade it, especially because the more you do, the more uglier and uglier and uglier it gets. One, why? It makes no sense. It really doesn't. In fact, the only two armor I could actually agree with is something that you had to buy. That would have to be the Carolingian style pack, none of which they got actually historically correct. They would have worn scale and as well mail underneath, and as well some historical long boots. However, the helm is a little different. However, the weapons and shield I'll have to talk about very soon. Now, also, there's also the other character variation that looks like it came from the Vendel period prior before the Viking Age. And these guys would have worn that beautiful design Vendel, which Vendel style helms, I don't know why, are just so beautiful. But yeah, I am planning on getting a Vendel style helm very soon, hopefully. So yeah, these things are just beautiful. But that's beside the way. But by that point in time in history, that helm would have been no. It would have not existed. However, I do like the fact that the outfit was historically colorized, but the problem is it was covered in blood for some reason, which I don't know why. And here's another thing. The mail wasn't on the outside. Here's the thing. The mail has to be on the outside for this to be historically accurate enough. So, I had to just have points and such. Now, with Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Origins, at least they give you somewhat a more historical accuracy, especially Odyssey. However, Assassin's Creed, the original, had incredible historical accuracy with the armor, especially with the European style, which you gotta love that variation. But that's another time, I guess. Now, one thing I have to also put out here is now with pretty much also the fact your characters, every one of his armors, do not upgrade them. Because the further you upgrade them, the uglier and uglier they get, as I state. And most of the helms are not even historically accurate. In fact, they give you a stupid mask covering because of 2020 or whatever. And even that's ugly. And don't get me started on the cloaks. Just, no, the cloaks are just ugly. I mean, I like the fact of that bare skin covering, maybe. But then they go a little more outrageous with it and make it more uglier and uglier and uglier by adding pauldrons, which, no, pauldrons did not exist. No, they did not exist. Not in this point in timeline. In fact, that is purely no. In fact, mostly the only thing that covered, well, the shoulders would pretty much be nothing unless you wore mail, and that's about it. Now, we also have to put out here the helms. As I state, the only two historical helms I would probably go with or any type, would probably actually be that one with the Vendel style design. However, they should have done just like what they did with Odyssey. Make it as though that you can easily change out the skins and such to make it a little more historically accurate, and probably giving you more historical type clothing rather than what they gave us. Yeah. In fact, one major way I can explain this is with this beauty. This is a Viking style helm. In fact, this actually was used during the early Viking periods, especially during the Great Heathen Army, as we see in the said video game. Let me see if I can just get this thing on first. As you can see, my helm is on. Oh, and one of the buckles in the way right now. There we go. Okay, now as we can see, this is a historical style Viking helm. These would have actually been used by Vikings who could have actually, well, afford them. They would have had the Ventil on the neck, because back then there was no neck covering. However, sometimes if they couldn't afford it, it would be just blank. However, many Vikings that couldn't afford mail in general, they would have just worn this, a jerkin. A jerkin is, well, this type of coat design armor. I guess you could call it the early gambeson of the era, which, so, yeah. However, this style of helm has been used by Vikings, especially. Now, if they had added this helmet, which I would have loved, especially in historical design, but no, they gave us a variation of this in an ugly form, which, no, that is as ugly as hell. And because I would have actually loved to actually have my beard out, especially, because that would have been cool, especially with this helmet. And as well, there are also many other variations like this one. And as well, there's also the Rus style helm and many others. Especially the fact that I see a couple of Saxons wearing a helmet just near identical to this, which is historical to that timeline somewhat. So, yeah, we can understand how there's a huge difference. But, yeah. Another thing, they would have also sometimes worn this style of helm, which is one of my favorites, the nasal style helm with the eyebrows, which is really cool. Now, yes, Vikings would have worn this type of helmet sometime during this time period a little more because it was slightly cheaper than to afford this. Why? Kind of obvious. Less amount of metal. But, yeah, that's a huge difference to the form. So, yeah. Now, another thing they could have added also for the van brace or leg braces would actually be these beauties. Now, these would have actually sometimes been used in historical style warfare for the Vikings or Saxons. They would have been strapped on and given historical type of, well, coverage. Which, let me just put this on so I can show you my point. Now, maybe you might say, were these historical? Yes, depending if you could well afford them. However, they somewhat started to die off in history, especially. However, it's actually stated the Varangian Guard might have actually used something near identical to this, especially to stop cutting blows. So, yeah, this does look like it could work. So, yeah, we can see why the Vikings would have used something like this. But guess what? They don't give us that at all. They give us crappy fantasy armor and outfits, and it's just ugly as hell. Yeah, I'm not happy with that. Then there is also the fact that some of your allies, especially, as I state, are wearing scale. No, Vikings, no, they did not wear scale armor. The only type of plate, as I state, they would probably wear would be this, or would be a helmet, or even laminar. Laminar is a beautiful design type of armor that would have actually been used by Vikings. Not just in steel, but also in leather. However, it depends on how wealthy they actually were. So, yeah, it's kind of a hard one to explain. But we have to understand, though, the history on the Vikings is a lot different. They would have looked near identical to the Saxons. However, I can see why they didn't do that, but you gotta admit, they probably should have done something in order to make them, well, more historical than to make them look like a stupid fantasy character. You can understand how stupid it looks just by looking at that. But another thing I also have to talk about is the picks. This is really bad. How bad? Really, really bad. This is just so really stupid. They make the guy look, as I state, they make this guy look like a savage person. When in truth, no, they would have not looked like that. They would have looked more like this. They would have had worn checkered style clothing, the pictai and stuff. Now, this is before the Kingdom of Elba came around during the 900 AD, so yeah. And as which, these guys, they would have worn historical style armor. Some of them would have actually worn mail. And as well, they would have also taken helmets and such, it depends. And some of them would have even had scale armor as well. Now, I hear many of you already, but Templar, didn't the Vikings not wear armor? Yeah, but that's the difference. The Picts and the Welsh were technically the last people who fought against the Romans, before the Saxons came around. And the thing is, they would have also worn scale armor, just like the said Welsh. However, the Welsh can be a little different for a major reason, which I'll get to soon. Which, this is a major thing. These guys in the video game, they look like, well, just no. And in the process, they just give them something else than what they're supposed to be given. In fact, Welsh warriors would have actually fought pretty much, well, a lot different than what you think. They would have worn elongated tunics, and as well, they would have also worn, sometimes pants, sometimes not, depending, and such. They would have also worn the said mail and laminar, or scale, depending on what they could afford. And as well, sometimes a helmet. So, Yeah, however, their helmet design is slightly like that of the Western-style Roman helmet. So, yeah, we can understand where that comes from. In fact, I actually have an example like this. In fact, this is a Western-style Roman helmet, or cavalry-style helm, that of which it stated that the late Britons, or in this case, the Welsh, when they actually became their own, Britannic nation, or the Kingdom of the Britons, in this case, prior before the Saxons drove them out and such, they would have actually worn something like this. And in fact, they should have actually been wearing that as when they were in the Welsh form. In fact, in the video game, they're known as the Britons, but they're still technically the Welsh. Now, they could have worn this style helm for the said commander, and the soldiers could have worn a helmet like this, which they were also known to have worn. But the thing is, they don't do that. They give them Saxon armor, which I don't know why, because this does not make any sense entirely. Now, many of you might wonder why. Kind of obvious. If you're going to wear historical style armor, especially, you don't want to actually put on the wrong set of armor. You want to put on historical style armor. In fact, many reenactors get after actors in Hollywood for getting the wrong armor and equipment and such, or outfits especially. And there are actually, for example, the Battle of Gettysburg was mostly, or the movie Gettysburg, for example, was made up of entirely of reenactors, not movie stuntmen, which is what I had to put out here. But the thing is, the Welsh, they're wearing Saxon armor when they should be wearing Welsh Britannic armor, or in this case, Arthurian style armor, which, as it's been known, it's, in other words, they would have looked something like this. They would have looked somewhat near identical to the said, Picti. Their gear and armor would have looked like that of, well, the late Roman Empire, somewhat by this point in time. In fact, this image is the best example of a said Saxon officer with his scale armor and his style of helm. So he would have looked near identical to the Picts or the Alban type culture. But the thing is, they don't cover that at all, which is kind of disappointing. Now, before any of y'all start saying, oh, but Templar, we don't know what the people of Alba really looked like or anything. Actually, we do. There are many stone carvings that actually date back to that timeline that actually show on what they would have been dressed as. So, yeah, this is why I really don't like this setup in this video game at all. In fact, they could have given it a little more oomph because they got the Saxons right. They could have gotten everything else right. But they didn't, which is really annoying. So, yeah, that's kind of stupid. Alright, weapons and shields. Oh boy, this is going to be hard to explain. Now, let's first start off with the Carolingian pack. At least with it, they got it right with the spear and the shield. In fact, the shield is historically accurate. In fact, Carolingian shields had this type of protrusion-like curvature because these type of, design that they had on this guy was kind of like that of the cavalry, which Carolingian cavalry had this protrusion on the shield, as I state, to stop certain weapons. Now, this was before the kite shield came around. And this is what I have to put out by the shield. This is what I find really stupid, because the shield they were using in the said video games, especially, which this is what I find very idiotic. Most of the said shields, as soon as you upgrade them to a certain point, they get to a curve, which makes no sense. Now, they also have the kite shield in there, which makes no sense. Now, here's the thing, though. There are historical style kite shields they could have gone with, but no, they just made their own weird fantasy look, which is really stupid. Why? I don't know. Because it's not beautiful at all, and they should have really done their job at that. Because, let's just be honest, it was a bad idea. And there are also other idiotic shields they have also put in there, which I really don't like. However, the Viking shield you get in the game early on is near identical to that of this Viking shield. However, not in particular because, well, my Viking shield, its grip is more close to the said, frame of the sword type shield. And as well, the shield is mostly made out of rawhide and wood. And as well, it has this linen glued on to stop certain weapons from penetrating through the certain arms or, well, anywhere else. And as well, the boss is in the center. And what I do like about it, at least it's not, well, let me do this. At least it's not a strap-on, which I don't like. Now, you can actually see your character actually wear the shield on his back, which, yes, Vikings did do that to carry the shields. In fact, I got my strap on here to prove my point. But the thing is, the further you upgrade your first shield, the more and more it gets to a curve, which that's where it just goes down the drain. Yeah, that was probably not their best idea. Now, why don't we also now go to the fact on pretty much everyone else's mind also is with also the weird rectangular square shields that the Saxons are using. Which, no, they would have not used those. They would have used a round shield like this, because they were technically just like the descendants of Vikings themselves. They were Danes. That's what Saxons are. But the thing is, even the Welsh at this point in time would have also used the round shield. However, the only people that would have been using that square or rectangular shield would be the Picts. Now that's incredibly different, because it would be like a buckler style shield. However, it would be near identically to the size of a heater shield at the time. So yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. But the thing is, yeah, that's incredible to its form. So yeah. Another thing I had to explain to y'all is before the, well, evolution of the side of weaponry and such, or of the Welsh or the Celtic people of Elba, the armor system was still technically from antiquity, and that's incredibly different. But I think I'll get to that very soon. Now, why don't we go to the swords, especially to the fact of the swords that the weapon, type of weapon they do not have, is the fact that they do not actually have any broadswords. They don't have one-handed swords like this beauty. In fact, this is a late Roman spatha. However, these would have also been used by the said Saxons. Now, even though this is a spatha, this can still be a dangerous weapon to their opponent. And in fact, this is historically accurate to what many Vikings, as well as many Saxons, and even Welsh had used, due to the fact of this design grip. Now, here's the thing though. This is entirely of a spatha design origin. However, they would have used something near identical to this. In fact, there are historical style type of swords and such that they could have used entirely in the video game, but yet they did not. In fact, your character doesn't get a sword like this. Your allies don't get swords like this. The only ones that get swords like this are the Saxons or your enemies. That's it. And that's really idiotic, because you gotta admit that's kind of really, really, really stupid. The fact that they get a broadsword yet you don't. Does anybody else know how stupid that sounds besides me? Anybody? Anybody at all? But yeah, because historically, they would have been a beautiful works of art on the said scabbards and such, but yet they didn't think of doing that at all, and I don't know why. My best bet, they probably didn't think anyone would get after them, but we are. Another type of bladed weapon would also be the sax. The saxes I see in the games, or any other bladed weapon in the game, this looks ugly and stupid, and too damn short to be behind the shield. Now, one thing that, now, don't get me wrong, during this point in time, saxes were used at many lengths. However, they should have gone with a long sax like this. Now, the sax would have had different style type guards or something like that. It depended. And, well, they would have looked more like this design. They would have had the back edge like this and the bladed edge like this. Reason being, it was made out of a type of quality of steely iron, meaning it could bend, it could warp. So it had to be manufactured in this type of form. So it could, well, look like this. But they don't make them look like that. They make them look like an ugly variation of which I don't understand why. In fact, these were beautiful type of works of weapons for the peasant soldier. Or in this case, the fjord, which I did a video on if y'all want to see them. But yeah, if any of y'all want to see any of my armor up videos or anyone I also recommend for armor up videos, I will leave down a link below, especially with Teutonic Penguin, who just got his one done recently. Okay, now let's also go to their axes. Now, especially the one-handed axe, they did somewhat right, but they also did slightly wrong. One major reason why is the fact this is historical style head that what many Viking axes or would have somewhat looked like. Now, this is a bearded style. There would also be the hatchet style and many others. However, whatever the hell they did with theirs in the video game, apparently they, I don't even know what I can say. They enlarged it for some reason, which I don't know why you would do that, because it makes no sense. Because, one, you need some, because two, one major reason to this is the fact it's going to cost a lot more. Two is the fact that it's going to weigh a lot more. And the major part to that is, here's the thing. How are you going to end up having enough power to swing this thing? Because, here's the thing. This is a devastating chopping weapon, yes, but that's a different story. Now, another thing I have to put out there, they also didn't, especially when you see the throwing capability of the weapon, especially, which this is what I like to see them doing the throwing type thing. Which that's my favorite point. The only axe I see him throwing is something like this. No, this would not be a throwing axe. This is a bearded axe. Bearded axes were meant for a person, one-on-one fighting style, meaning I can, well, hook a person's arm with his shield or his sword. But the thing is, in that game, they just use this, they only use this for throwing and such, mainly when I see it. But the thing is, the one axe they would use for throwing would be a Francisca. A throwing axe would be, which actually gave the name to the modern nation of France, or Francia. That's its name. Francisca, the kingdom of the Franks, which is how they got their name. Now, they could have also used that as a regular style weapon in the game. Yes, because these weapons were known as devastating weapons. They've been known to bounce off the ground and into the opponent's head. So even if you get behind your shield wall, that thing's still going to go over the shield and probably into your neighbor. So yeah. But I do like the fact they somewhat did a little historical accuracy with the said axe, except for your main character's main axe, which is this ugly. Yeah, that knob on the back is this ugly as hell. Another axe is also the fact of them using Dane Axes. Now, Dane Axes somewhat existed, especially with the Housecarl, which that brings me to my next character. The Housecarl characters, no, they look ugly as hell. And in fact, I even did a video on the Housecarl, especially the late Housecarls, by the 900s to the 1066 period. So, yeah, now, there are different variations from the early variations during this point in time, which I did somewhat include their point in helmets. But the thing is, they were known to have used axes like this because they were champion warriors. But the Dane axes they use in the video game are so ugly. In fact, the only good Dane axe I see in there is probably the one that's, or two of them, which you gotta buy, or the fact that you gotta get a Ubisoft Connect system to it, which makes no sense. And in fact, one of them does look just like this with the said beautiful, well, Visby design cross type pattern. However, the one known as the Dwarven Axe, I think, is pretty good too. But the thing is, those are the only two, and I only have the Dwarven Axe in the game, and that's saying something. So, many of you are asking, but Templar, how bad is it? Here's the thing. Many of the Dane Axes I've seen in the game are so just ugly. They are not historical. In fact, there is too much metal. Now, as I said, that's going to cost a lot more money. And two, it's going to actually it's going to weigh a lot more, meaning you're going to need a lot more power to lift the said thing up. This, I got no problem. It's light. It's effective. With those, it's like probably trying to lift a sledgehammer. You see my point? In fact, try swinging a sledgehammer all the way around and try controlling it. That's right, you can't do it, can you? It's not easy. But that's my major point. But yeah, many of you are wondering, what about the greatsword? Well, I'll get to that very soon, because that is a whole matter of stupidity at the end of this. Another thing I like to put out there is also with these, the spear. Now, they did have spears in the game, especially, which I do like. Now, I do like the fact they gave us Odin's spear, especially, which is cool. However, they didn't have javelins, which have this protrusion-type bodkin point, which I really don't like. Another fact is the major factor reason that these type of, well, spear would have looked something like this. However, there would also be winged spears that we do see in the game. But, yeah, they would have actually not... But this is what I really hate about that. The fact is, when it comes to the spear, you have to use 2 hands at first until you get the upgraded for a dual wielding, which makes no sense. Because because if you take a look at the protrusion on how big the spear is so long, that is a pike. That is not a spear, or it's technically a lance or a pike. That is not a spear. That is not meant for one-on-one fighting. That is meant for formation fighting, which is a huge difference. This right here, this one right here, which I keep using for many of my how-to videos, it's historical type length, which I find really stupid that they don't cover that entirely. Another thing I like to put out here is the bow and arrow, which they do somewhat show, which I like, especially with the Saxons, because the Saxons were known to have used bows, but not when it came for formation fighting. But I think I'll get to that very soon, because the fact is the bow design system is a lot different for military strategies of warfare for the Saxons than most people think. However, let's get to the real shit show on that video game, and that would be the fact that there's a freaking Dane, a type of, well, a greatsword in the said video game, which, no, greatswords do not exist at this time. Great swords did not exist during this point in time period, especially during the late 800s, due to the fact that, here's a major detail that we had to understand, these type of major type of swords were not entirely used until the late medieval period, or high medieval period, in order to break down cavalry, and as well even spear formations, and even try and crack through said human bone, especially underneath mail and plate armor. But you can see why this has to not be in the video game. In fact, you only get 2. Now, one of the DLCs I could have seen a greatsword probably be perfect for would be in the, I want to say, Beowulf one, which if none of y'all know the tale Beowulf, I'll leave a link down below for the Clash of Gods, which is a great documentary, by the way. And it even has J.R.R. Tolkien's version on it, which I do like. But yeah, it even talks on how the fact is that there was a great ancient weapon in history, which I'll leave an animated short film, which is about half an hour, give or take. And no, it's not that 2014 variation film on Beowulf, which sucks, by the way, because that is not historical to what they would look like. And which you'll see what I mean when you see the series, the short movie, which at least it was a lot better. But yeah, one major thing I had to put out here, they did show a greatsword, which is stated that a giant of an ancient race would have, Beowulf would have grabbed a, well, sword from a giant's lair. So yeah, they could have done that in the said DLC, but they didn't, which I kind of disappointed. So yeah. Let's just say it was not the best video game for arms and armor entirely. Alright, now let's go into tactics. What is the major difference in the tactics? Everything. Everything is different in this, actually. One major thing why it's different is the fact that, well, the tactics in this, there is no shield wall formation. And as well, you even see Vikings attacking strongholds, which no, Vikings would have not attacked strongholds. That is a big no-no. In fact, Vikings and Danes, or in this case, Vikings and Saxons, would have actually used the shield wall formation. In other words, they would have starved out, either have starved out a said group out inside a city, for example, or in this case, faced off each other in a major open field. That's actually how they would have done it. In fact, this was a major sense of honor and such that they had back then, so yeah. Another thing is that the Saxons would have used spears type formation in order to, well, as we understand from the Battle of Hastings, they would have actually held off the said, well, Norman knights, and even, well, pushed down on their enemies using a shield wall formation to break it up. Now, it's actually stated, though, that archery wasn't used in the Saxon ranks and military unless it was actually used for skirmishing units to destroy supply lines, which we kind of have to understand that's actually incredible to the fact of how the Saxons might have used them. So, yeah, Saxon archermen were very rare, were pretty much just poor peasants, which killed and destroyed said supply lines of many Vikings and sometimes even Normans, especially during the time when the Normans kind of conquered England. So, yeah. Now, as I said, also with the invasion of the major strongholds, no, they wouldn't exactly sack a major town or something like that, which is incredibly well fortified. They would actually wait and starve the enemy out. They would want them to come to them or surrender. That's actually how they would have done it. So why did they do this weird shit? We don't know, but I don't like it at all. It's very... There's no greatness in this game, I can tell you that. But, yeah, the tactics in this game is this sucks. There's so much suckiness, I cannot even compare of how sucky this is. Alright, now let's go to Strongholds and Outposts. Now, as you saw me talk about the tactics and such with them not attacking major fortifications, well, that got me thinking, what about the fortifications? Well, here's the thing. Guess what their fortifications are? They look like medieval castles. All their outposts throughout England are all these medieval stone castles. No, those would not exist. These were incredibly a big no. In fact, the only stone structure ever to be used would actually be of a major walled city. That's it. It wouldn't be castles. Castles did not exist until after the Norman conquest, and especially during the time when Edward the Great, or in this case, also with the infamous William the Conqueror, who of which actually started conquering areas with the Moat and Bailey castles. However, that's entirely different. Now, one major reason to this is the fact that in the video game we see these stone fortifications. No, these were not historical. And here's the thing. One of the most famous asinine kings in history, known as, well, Edward the First, or in this case, Edward the Longshanks, the Hammer of the Scots also, he would have pretty much actually created castles all throughout Scotland and, well, Wales, and including even Ireland. The thing is, even his predecessors and successors also tried to do the same. So, yeah, we could see why and how, due to the fact they were trying to conquer the said region. But, yeah, even, well, Richard the Lionheart and King John, and even prior before them, other kings and barons prior before them didn't have major castles or strongholds, mostly, due to the fact it was somewhat rare. However, it's actually stated that King Richard had actually used a type of siege warfare to destroy French castles. So, yeah. But the thing is, this is entirely different compared to that because, well, King Richard was technically during the time of the Second Crusade, not during this point in time in history during the late 800s. Now, many of you might start wondering, but this has to do with something. Well, no, because the fact is, they could have added something entirely historical, and that would be ring forts. If none of you know what a ring fort is a Viking-style stronghold, which these were actually created by the Vikings in order to conquer a said region. They'd be entirely a ring-type shape. They would be right by rivers and such, and sometimes they would be divided by rivers, but this would actually sometimes add to, well, major fortifications, just in case if one was taken or such. which I'm kind of sad to say they don't have in the entirety of the game. In fact, I see walled cities, but nothing ever related to a ring-type structure entirely. In fact, these ring structures were technically like the military barracks. In fact, there would be longhouses, especially in this area. These were known to hold said villagers and such. They were known to hold families and the military, especially for the Danish kings, especially when they started to conquer all of Norway and such. So, yeah. In fact, this actually became famous with King Harold, who actually, I think they usually talk about it in the game. I can't remember. It's been a while, but yeah, I don't want to play it again. Major reason why is because it's not that good. But yeah, they don't have ring forts, which is bad. But I do see some abandoned outposts or fortresses that look near identical to Celtic hill forts. Now, those are somewhat good because they were still somewhat around, but they were technically destroyed. In fact, by the time of the Vikings, their structures and stuff, they would not have existed. They got that one correct, unless the fact that those are new modifications on the said outposts. So, yeah. So, they should have added a little more better information into this, because they should have added the ring forts to make this better. Alright, now let's go into the areas. Now, many of you might wonder, Templar, what are the areas? Well, this one is kind of the major hard part to explain, due to the fact, well, let's talk about the areas they don't show where the Vikings had been. Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Cornwall. Yeah, they don't cover them. And as well, also France. However, the only way you're gonna get the DLCs, in fact, here's the thing. In Ireland, in fact, the only way you're gonna see Ireland and France is gonna be in the DLCs, that's it. But the thing is, I don't see Daneland, which is also a big mistake, because there would have been Vikings there also. The only place we do see is Norway. That's it. Which makes no sense. In fact, Odyssey was a bigger map than whatever the hell this was. But at least they do show North America, which I kind of do like, but this is during the 800s, and all information of this would have been lost to time. But I can see why they're trying to get, the fact is, because they are trying to put their own storyline into it, so you can see, understand why. But the thing is, when we take a look at the map, there is major problems in the game, and the major problem is they only show Norway and England. Yeah, there's no good point to that. Now, many of you might start saying, but Templar, we saw the Picts or the early Elba people, yeah, and as well with the Britons, but we didn't see, well, them entirely, which is kind of a big disappointment. Now, even though the Welsh weren't entirely seen during this point in time period, it would have still been a little nicer to see more historical accuracy involved. Now, even though they did put some ancient holidays, such as the ancient Halloween, which I kind of liked, which is kind of cool, but yeah. Now, major thing also to the fact is the fact that the areas they're covering, now, especially, they even show Hadrian's Wall, which I kind of do like. However, I don't like the fact that apparently it's midwinter when the rest of the said country of England is apparently all in the springtime, which makes no sense. Due to the fact, no, that is not how geography works. That's not how climate works. That is this idiotic entirely. So, yeah, they probably should have fixed that up entirely, if you ask me. Alright, now let's talk about the groups. Well, what groups do we have? Well, we have the Welsh, we have the Saxons, we have the Scots, or Picts, and as well, we have the Vikings. That's it. Now, we have to understand the fact they do actually have a major point into this on their side of said culture. However, I had to put out here, there's a huge variation they could have changed entirely with the outlook and such. Because in truth, they don't exactly have much historical accuracy what they would have looked like nor do they have much historical accuracy of what they might have sounded like, which is kind of disappointing. However, they do have some ways they would have talked and such, which is kind of nice, so maybe. But, yeah. But as well, with the DLCs is also a major point I had to explain to y'all, is the fact that the DLCs in the game, you gotta buy or whatever. Now, one of the DLCs is a Berserker, which this is really bad, because the early time I saw him, he's using a Renaissance-looking double-headed axe. No! They would not exist. No! That is just ugly. Double-headed axes never existed for warfare use. They were mainly just meant for decoration only, until probably during the 1800s, when you could start to use it for cutting or chopping down a tree. So it's kind of hilarious. But yeah. Now, the only DLC I kind of did like a lot was the fact of the Beowulf saga. The Beowulf saga was beautiful. Now, if none of y'all know what the armor I was wearing, I mainly was wearing the Carolingian style armor with the Vindel style helm, which you gotta admit, that sounds incredible to its form. You admit this makes it a little cooler. I don't know why. I just have to make my guy look cooler and historical to make it more a historical appeal. Because literally, they could have done a million things better with this game for the historical appeal. But I do like the fact that they had Grendel be a child who technically was not the right of mind, because apparently he was technically still believed he was a child. So, yeah. But in truth, in the original story of the Beowulf saga, it's actually stated that Grendel might have actually been a troll, which, yeah, that's kind of hilarious if we think about it. But now, another thing I also have to explain, also with the groups area, is the fact that the bandits, especially also with the idiot Goliath character, apparently he's huge as freaking hell, but yet he has scrawny arms. What part of that makes sense? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah. But pretty much I have to put out here, the DLCs were incredibly awesome with the said, well, Beowulf. But we'll soon see with the invasion of Paris if it's any better, because I don't know. It's gonna probably be just as bad as the idiocy of the that series Vikings, which kind of got a lot of it wrong and such. So yeah. But we have to understand, though, the Beowulf is probably the best one of them out there, which I kind of do like that a lot. But, as I said, they probably should have given us a great sword in just that area and just stayed that way. And in fact, they could have just given us historically accurate broadswords like they should have. Because this would have been a lot more badass looking with the sword and shield combo. Because I don't know why. That would have made it a little more badass. Because I could have forgiven them if they gave me that. But they didn't. So what's my rating for this game? Sadly, it's not good. It's a 1.5. That's not good. 1.5 stars. In fact, I'm probably going to have to go with a 1 star or a 0.5 star or half a star or something like that, because this game really sucked. The only thing good with it that came out of it was the storyline. That was it. They could have had incredibly greatness with the historical type of outfits and equipment, and as well the homes and all that, which I have to put this out here, the homes in the game also weren't actually what they would have looked like also. They did have some historical, but not a lot. And the thing is, yeah. They did not do a very good job. In fact, they kind of just ruined their own game system. And Assassin's Creed Odyssey, now that was beautiful. It was beautiful down the line. This, only thing great with it was the mythology story and your main story. That's it. Now, maybe you might say I'm being too hard. Well, we gotta be hard on Assassin's Creed if they're gonna ever make a good game again. because I loved Assassin's Creed from the original to, I want to say, until after Rogue, because Rogue was great, but as soon as we got to Unity, it started to suck until they brought up Origins, which was kind of good, but Odyssey was perfect. They should have stayed like that and kept it like that. Problem is, they didn't, which in truth, they made it harder for themselves and for the rest of our community to love their video games. Because you gotta admit, they could have made the Vikings more Viking-ish than sucky-ish. Because literally, it's more like fantasy crap mixed in with Dungeons and Dragons. It doesn't make any sense. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, like and subscribe. Also, click the bell button for notifications. If y'all want to actually know any more about this, let me know in the comments below. And as well, I'll be happy to get to them especially. Now, if y'all have a type of particular video game that you want me to talk that has history involved, please let me know in the comments below, because I will be wanting to go to the original Assassin's Creed probably very soon. And as well, we will also be covering other type of systems of, well, stuff very soon, especially for Fantasy Friday very soon. Now, if any of y'all have any ideas, as I state, for the Vikings and such, Viking equipment, or anything like that, please let me know in the comments below. Also, like and subscribe, and click that bell button for notifications, so that way you understand when the next video comes up. Also, check us out on Facebook. Anyways, guys, it's been Templar. Have a great day.